All right, painting. It's a part of every renovation. You can't get away from it no matter how big or small your project is. It always seems you have to do some painting to make it look good. Now, if you're planning on selling your home or you plan on moving into a home, it's something you definitely want to do before you do either one of those. For one, if you're trying to sell, it's going to make your home more desirable. And if you're moving in, it's just going to be a lot easier before you move all your stuff in. So I'm going to give you a lot of great tips on how to go about this doing efficiently and quickly. And the big key is the more you use this, the longer it takes. Okay, so my first tip, it revolves around using this. The more that you have to use this, the longer it takes. You know, you're definitely a lot more effective if you can spray most of the areas of the room. And a big time consuming part is actually doing the trim. So in this particular situation, it's not going to work for everyone. It all depends on the kind of windows you have and whether they were painted or not. But this home has been painted over a dozen to maybe 15 times since I've owned the place, and there's paint all over the sides of the frame. So I would have to repaint the frames of the windows anyways, so it's going to be a lot easier. Let's just take the windows out and then you can just spray all the trim. Okay, so my second tip is any caulking that you have to do. Now I'm painting today, so I want to try to get right on to priming everything. And most likely I'm going to end up priming this trim as well, just because I have a lot of touch-ups and I've been using a lot of caulking. But I definitely recommend using a quick dry type of siliconized latex caulking. This dries in about a half an hour, so then I can move on to the painting. So if you have a lot of areas that you have to touch up, using the quick dry will allow you to get the painting much quicker. So I'm just going to basically caulk all the areas around the window, and then after that I'm going to wipe down all the walls, and then I can get into the priming. So, you know, half hour is a good fast drying time for caulking. Okay, then on touch-ups, I like to use this spackle shrink-free spackling. This stuff dries really quickly and I can pretty much immediately prime this. So this is not very much. I mean, if you're doing major drywall work, you're going to want to do that, you know, the day before or sometime prior to that. But just for touch-ups, this is really great because I'm able to just put this on there. It's not going to shrink and I can immediately prime it. So I've got a couple areas here above my fireplace that I need to get a little bit better at smoothing this out. So this is great for like little nail holes. So if you had pictures hanging on the wall, you could just fill those grooves with this. And then you don't have to worry about it shrinking. And you can basically get right on the priming. Okay, and then you're going to want to wipe down all your walls with a damp sponge just to get any of the dust off, because it doesn't really like, you know, paint doesn't really stick to dust very well, and you don't want to have any imperfections or any little basically dust balls on your walls. So wipe down those walls, especially around the base trim. Okay, so obviously a sprayer is going to get you the quickest results, and so, you know, I know that seems kind of obvious that a spray gun is going to be a lot quicker than hand painting, but there's a couple things about this that, you know, you're not going to be able to do everything with it. Some people think that you get a sprayer, you're able to paint all the walls the color that you want. You usually don't use color for the actual spraying. Typically, I just spray the ceilings to flat white, and then I paint all the trim. That at least eliminates me having to use a paintbrush to actually do all of the trim. So yeah, let's get to it. We're gonna prime everything that we've had addressed on the walls. So this, like I said, this home has been painted a million times, and if you already have paint, you don't necessarily need primer. Most of the time, you know, that paint is you know, probably already well on there, and that you're not going to have to prime the surface before you actually do that. But if you do any drywall repair, you're definitely gonna have to prime that area so that the paint all matches when you cover it over. In my experience, there is no such thing as a one coat paint. So typically it takes 2 coats no matter what kind of paint you use. And if you prime the surfaces that you've addressed first, then 2 coats usually does it and it looks great. But otherwise, you might have to do a 3rd coat in some of those areas if it doesn't work out. So what I got was just a simple Graco sprayer, nothing really special. It definitely wouldn't be considered a professional grade sprayer. This is kind of more the homeowner or renovator like myself. 300 bucks at today's prices, the amount of time I'm going to save doing this is really worth it to me. And as far as the primer, since I'm not blocking out any stains, I'm just going to be using a PVA primer. It's basically just a drywall primer. So nothing real special about it, but the biggest thing is it's going to seal that surface so that when I apply the finish coat, it has a nice even coat on it. So, all right, so let's go ahead and just get this ready. So the other thing I want to mention is I did take down all the light fixtures. In my mind, it makes more sense because then you don't have to worry about taping them off, especially ceiling fans. They can be a real pain in the neck to actually tape off. I find it easier just to remove them so you can spray the ceiling effectively. So let's go ahead and prime some of these patch areas so that we have a nice finish. So I'm also going to paint the base trim with the primer because I want to make sure that I get a nice coat on that as well. I took off the quarter round, so there's a lot of areas that are exposed basically with just raw wood. So I want to prime that as well. So this is where it definitely saves a lot of time using a sprayer, especially when you don't have any carpet or flooring. I mean, these railings can just take up an enormous amount of time to do by hand. So I'm gonna prime this all first because I have so much, filth on here, and I wanna make sure I get a couple of coats of real paint on here as well. So I'm just gonna put some primer on here. Definitely a lot faster with a sprayer. Okay, so the other thing you want to do is take off all the hardware off your doors. These are all painted, so I'm not worried about painting over them. But if you had hinges that were nice, I would recommend either just painting over them and getting new ones, because you can get like a 60 pack of hinges for like 50 bucks, or just use, like I have a whole bunch of hinges that I have left over from all these jobs, and I just take out the new ones, put in the ones that are painted, and then after everything's set and painted, go ahead and put the hinges back on. So either way is good, but this is an old door with hinge system, so it's just getting painted, not a big deal. So the age-old question, do you paint the walls and cut in the trim, or paint the trim and cut in the walls? Well, in my mind, it's going to be a lot easier to spray the trim and then paint the walls and cut in against that trim. Especially when you're into old trim like this, where it's been caulked and painted a million times. It's really difficult to get a nice straight trim line on the trim if you're painting the trim. So cut in the walls after you spray the trim. So if you ever painted anything like this is where a sprayer really saves a ton of time. Now obviously you can't have the floor covering, you have to make sure you're getting new carpet or whatever, but spraying this really is going to save a lot of time. Okay, so cutting in, using these stilts are really going to make a big difference with your speed, because you're able to get up to the ceiling and be able to cut in really easily. So this is not for everyone, but if you can balance on these things well, it's definitely worth putting on. Okay, so I like to use these angle brushes, and we're just going to go ahead and cut in our ceiling. So there is no doubt that painting is probably one of the most unappreciated part of any renovation. Any home buyer or anybody that comes into the home, they just automatically expect it, and it does take a lot of labor. So I give my respect to all the painters out there. It's definitely a lot of work, and you know, I appreciate it. I always appreciate a nice paint job. So my biggest tip on painting corners like this, freehanding it, you know, especially when you have a rough surface like this is definitely not anything perfect about these walls. It's just to get plenty of paint on your brush and then try to do long, continuous strokes. Now you're gonna have to sometimes go back to fill in any of the imperfections, but you know, a rough surface really is the most difficult one to go about. But I like to use a 2.5-inch brush, a fairly stiff brush, so they can actually go into the grooves. Sometimes if you get too flexible of a paintbrush, it doesn't like to fill in all those little smaller holes. Okay, so if you want to speed up your painting process, I recommend getting a wide roller like this. This is made by Purdy. It's an 18-inch wide roller. Use a 1/2-inch nap roller on rough walls. This will definitely speed up the process because you're getting twice as much coverage with each movement. So coming upstairs, got some new carpet. Makes a big difference. Everybody's gonna love these big bedrooms. You know, there isn't gonna be any fighting over which bedroom's the best because they're all really large sized. This is the front room. We put a new window in this particular room. Mainly just to aesthetically make it look nice outside because we replaced the bathroom window as well. But very nice, 10, I think this is 11 by 13. Everything's freshly painted and yeah, really enjoyable sized bedrooms. In a lot of ways, this could be considered the master because this is like the largest bedroom, 11 by 14. And again, you got a lot of light with these windows and large, spacious, really nice, some really nice room in here as well. Ceiling fans, also kind of a nice feature, kind of gives you some warmth to the room. And then this is the third bedroom. It's probably the smallest, but still decent sized. This is basically 10 by 12. And so as you can see, some nice windows, bringing nice some light into the space as well. coming into our attic room. This is a very spacious bedroom. I could almost see someone when I'm making this their master bedroom because it's so large. Basically 14 feet. This is basically 14 by 26, so it's the full attic space. Really nice size closet. Yeah, it's all ready to go up here. This is really a great space. And we also have some great closet space as well, which I know is important to everyone. So this is a nice quiet room. I love having a window facing out the front off the gable. Kind of gives you a street view, gives it a really comfortable feeling up here. I've always loved the attic spaces when they're finished like this.